In the hush of a late evening, when the world outside has folded into quiet, we begin our descent into the dust of time. The air feels ancient, as though each breath carries with it fragments of forgotten empires and whispered oaths left half-buried beneath the weight of centuries. The candlelight flickers, soft and golden, brushing across faded maps and brittle parchment, revealing only traces of what once was. Somewhere beyond the veil of history, treasures sleep, and the shadows that guard them breathe ever so faintly. This is not a tale of adventure told in the blaze of day, but a slow journey through memory, through mystery, through the fragile silence that lives between what we know and what we still fear to uncover. Humanity has always been drawn to what lies hidden: the buried gold, the sealed tomb, the locked chest beneath the sands. All whisper promises that feel both divine and forbidden. To seek treasure is to confront our oldest desire, the longing to possess what time has taken away. Yet, in every culture, there lingers a warning, a trembling echo that reminds us some things were never meant to be found. The ancient Egyptians carved their warnings in stone, their curses written not in anger, but in reverence, a plea to protect the sanctity of the dead. The Greeks told of Pandora, whose curiosity unleashed suffering upon the world. Even the Bible spoke of treasures that turned hearts to stone. And still, century after century, the human hand reaches into the unknown, trembling yet determined. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the sands of Egypt stretching endlessly beneath a burning sun. Imagine the cool silence of a tomb untouched by light for thousands of years. The scent of dust and myrrh fills the air. The air itself seems to hum with waiting. Then, somewhere in that vast stillness, the sound of a chisel, a breach, a trespass, a beginning. History records it as discovery, but legends remember it as awakening. From this moment onward, stories of cursed treasures would echo across continents, each shaped by its own soil and sorrow. The fascination with hidden riches has always danced on a fragile border between awe and greed. To dig into the past is to disturb the sleep of gods and ghosts alike. Every artifact unearthed is a question whispered into eternity. What price must be paid for knowledge, for possession, for the thrill of uncovering what was meant to stay lost? Some say the curse lies not in the object itself, but in the heart of the seeker, in the endless hunger to own what cannot be owned. Others believe the earth remembers, that the spirits of kings and warriors and ancient priests watch from the dark, their patience thin as dust, their silence a warning. The beauty of these tales lies not only in the glitter of the treasure, but in the shadow that trails it. Gold gleams brighter when darkness presses around it. The human story shines clearer when touched by mystery. For every legend of discovery, there is one of ruin, explorers who vanished, fortunes that dissolved, empires that crumbled under the weight of what they unearthed. And yet, this balance between wonder and warning keeps us listening, keeps us dreaming. We want to believe in magic, even when it terrifies us. We want to believe that somewhere out there, beneath the soil or behind stone doors, something waits for us, something vast, powerful, and dangerous enough to still matter. As the night deepens, we drift further into the realm of forgotten things. The air grows heavier with memory, as though the world itself exhales the stories it has held for too long. You can almost hear the soft rustle of linen wrappings, the whisper of sand shifting in an unseen corridor, the faint echo of a name spoken only by the dead. The candle burns lower, its flame bending toward the unseen. In this dim, patient light, history no longer feels distant. It feels alive, pulsing beneath the surface of the earth, waiting for another curious soul to draw near. We stand, as countless others have, at the edge of revelation and ruin. Every treasure promises eternity. Every curse reminds us of impermanence. And so, the stories of lost riches and ancient vengeance are more than superstition. They are reflections of our own desires and fears. The dream of possession, the dread of consequence. The glitter of gold, the shadow of death. In their dance, we see the whole of human nature, fragile and defiant, reaching through the darkness for light. Tonight, we will follow those who walked that dangerous path. Explorers, kings, thieves, scholars, all driven by the same quiet fire. We will listen to the hum of the past as it tells us what it remembers. Some of what you hear will be true, some imagined, and some perhaps both. But in the soft stillness of this night, truth and legend rest side by side, breathing as one. The story begins where light fades and the sands conceal their secret heart. It begins with the most famous tomb ever found, the resting place of a boy king and the curse that haunted his name. The sun rises slowly over the Valley of the Kings, painting the desert in shades of amber and gold. The year is 1922, and the air is thick with both heat and anticipation. Beneath this barren landscape, for more than 3,000 years, a secret has slept untouched, the resting place of a forgotten pharaoh. For years, the English archaeologist Howard Carter had searched these sands with the quiet desperation of a man chasing a ghost. Seasons came and went, sponsors grew impatient, and the desert seemed to mock him with silence. Yet something kept him there, a faint whisper that the most magnificent tomb of all still waited, hidden in plain sight. It was in November that his persistence finally met destiny. Carter's workers uncovered the edge of a stone step buried beneath the sand. With trembling care, they dug deeper, uncovering more steps that led down into the earth, where the air turned cool and heavy. At the bottom lay a sealed doorway, stamped with ancient symbols. The cartouche of Tutankhamun, the boy king. Carter's heart must have beat like thunder in his chest. He had found what others had only dreamed of, a tomb still sealed, still sacred, untouched by grave robbers or time. He sent word to his patron, Lord Carnarvon, and together they returned to that silent door. When they broke through the plaster seal and peered through a small hole, Carter held a candle to the gap. The flickering light caught on something within, and when his companion asked if he could see anything, Carter whispered words that would echo through history. Yes, wonderful things. Inside lay treasures beyond imagination. Gilded couches shaped like animals, chests inlaid with ivory, golden statues gleaming like captured sunlight, and in the heart of it all, the unbroken sarcophagus of a young pharaoh. For a brief moment, the modern world stood still. The discovery was hailed as the greatest archaeological triumph of the century. Reporters, scholars, and adventurers descended upon Egypt in a frenzy of fascination. Yet as the doors of the tomb opened, so too did something else. A whisper, faint at first, then growing louder with each passing week. Lord Carnarvon, the expedition's patron, was bitten by a mosquito shortly after entering the tomb. The wound became infected, and he died soon after. When news of his death reached Cairo, the lights in the city were said to flicker and go out for several minutes. His dog, miles away in England, reportedly let out a piercing howl at the exact same moment. The newspapers seized upon the tale with feverish delight. They called it the curse of the pharaoh. Within months, others connected to the discovery began to meet mysterious ends. A radiologist who x-rayed the mummy collapsed unexpectedly. An American visitor fell ill and died after entering the tomb, and still others claimed to have been plagued by strange accidents or shadowy visions. Whether coincidence or consequence, the stories grew like wildfire. The idea that Tutankhamun's spirit sought vengeance on those who disturbed his rest captured the imagination of the world. But was there truly a curse? Or was it something deeper, the unease of tampering with what should remain sacred? In ancient Egypt, the tomb was not merely a grave, but a bridge to eternity. The elaborate rituals, the sealed chambers, the golden idols, all were designed to protect the soul's journey beyond death. Hieroglyphs carved into tomb walls often contained warnings. Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king. To the ancient mind, this was not superstition, but sacred law. The afterlife was real, the dead were aware, and disturbing their rest could disrupt the order between worlds. Modern science has offered its own explanations. Some researchers suggest that ancient tombs may have harbored deadly mold spores or bacteria that could have caused fatal infections when released into the air. Others believe that the stress of fame and the harsh conditions of excavation contributed to the deaths. Yet even with rational answers, the idea of the curse refuses to fade. There is something inhumanly compelling about the notion that the past can reach out to punish the living, that the dead still guard their secrets with unseen hands. Carter himself lived for many years after the discovery, methodically cataloging every artifact from the tomb. He dismissed the curse as nonsense, a superstition fed by sensational journalism. Yet those who met him in his later years spoke of a man haunted, not by fear, but by a quiet weight, as though the presence of the boy king had never left his thoughts. When he died in 1939, a small statue of the falcon-headed god Horus was found beside his bed, placed there for protection. Perhaps even the skeptic had learned a measure of respect for the mysteries he had disturbed. The tomb of Tutankhamun remains one of the most famous finds in human history, a glittering time capsule of an empire's devotion to eternity. Each artifact speaks not only of wealth, but of belief in gods, in life beyond death, in the delicate balance between reverence and greed. And perhaps that is the true heart of the curse, not some supernatural vengeance, but the moral lesson embedded in the story itself. That every treasure worth finding demands a cost, and every secret unearthed asks whether we were meant to know it. As we stand before the golden mask of Tutankhamun, its eyes calm and knowing, we feel that paradox most keenly. Here lies beauty untouched by time, and yet, around it, the silence hums with warning. The air feels alive, the weight of eternity pressing gently against our modern curiosity. It is easy to forget that this treasure was never meant for us. It was a promise between a king and his gods, sealed beneath the earth to last forever. The desert outside remains unchanged, endless and eternal. Wind carries the faint sound of shifting sand, as if the earth itself is breathing. The tomb is closed once more, the lights extinguished, but its legend endures, a story shimmering between history and myth. Some see in it the triumph of discovery, others the arrogance of intrusion. Both may be true. The gold glows still, but in its gleam we can almost see the reflection of all who dared to seek it. The dreamers, the doubters, the doomed. And as the night folds once more around the valley, the whisper of the past drifts through the air, a reminder that even in wonder, there is warning. The boy king sleeps, his gaze eternal, his treasure eternal, his curse, perhaps, eternal too. Gold has always held a strange power over the human heart. It glows with a warmth that feels almost alive, a shimmer that seems to promise eternity. Across every civilization, in every corner of the world, people have reached for it, not just for wealth, but for something deeper, something sacred. It is the color of the sun, of divinity, of immortality. To the ancient Egyptians, it was the flesh of the gods. To the Incas, it was the sweat of the sun. And to kings and conquerors through the ages, it was proof that they could command the earth itself. Yet beneath its beauty lies something dangerous, something quietly consuming. Gold does not rust, but it corrodes the soul of those who hunger for it too deeply. After Tutankhamun's tomb was opened, the fascination with golden relics swept across the modern world. Museums filled their halls with treasures that once lay in sacred darkness. People came from distant lands to gaze upon them, whispering of curses and miracles. The same gold that once adorned the body of a god-king was now locked behind glass, stared at by millions of curious eyes. Somewhere in that transformation, from sacred offering to public spectacle, a piece of reverence was lost. The treasures of the dead became trophies for the living, and with that shift came unease. Even those who dismissed curses as fantasy could not help but feel a subtle weight in their presence, as if the gold still remembered the prayers it once answered. Gold has always been more than metal. It is a mirror that reflects the deepest desires of those who seek it. To a priest, it was a symbol of devotion. To a king, a measure of power. To a thief, a chance at freedom. But to the earth, it is simply another mineral, born in silence, waiting beneath the ground until someone dares to take it. And it is in that daring that greed often takes root. History is filled with stories of kingdoms undone by their pursuit of wealth, of emperors who melted the gold from their temples to fund wars that consumed them, of explorers who crossed oceans in search of shining cities and found only ruin. The line between reverence and obsession is thin, and humanity crosses it again and again. When we think of cursed treasures, it is easy to imagine angry spirits or vengeful gods. Yet sometimes the curse is quieter, not a supernatural wrath, but a chain of consequences set in motion by human hands. The lust for possession brings betrayal, exploitation, and loss. The weight of gold is not only physical. It presses on conscience, on community, on time itself. Perhaps that is why stories of cursed riches exist in every culture. They are warnings disguised as legends. A way for the past to speak to the future, whispering, "Be careful what you dig for." Imagine, for a moment, the hand of a miner pulling a golden idol from the earth, the rush of triumph, the gleam in torchlight, the sense that he has uncovered something divine. Yet that same hand trembles later, when storms rise, when misfortune follows. The mind searches for meaning, for reason, and finds it in the idea of a curse. But perhaps what it truly finds is reflection, the understanding that in taking what was never ours, we disturb more than soil. We disturb balance, we awaken memory. Gold connects the stories of humanity's rise and fall. It lured conquistadors into jungles, knights into crusades, and merchants across perilous seas. It adorned temples and crowns. It paid for wars and redemption alike. And it has always asked the same question in return. How much are you willing to lose for what you think you desire? In the quiet after Tutankhamun's tale, this thought lingers, that the power of treasure lies not in its shine, but in its silence. The gold itself never curses, never calls. It simply waits, patient as stone, until someone's longing gives it life. And once that longing begins, it seldom ends gently. As night deepens, we can almost see those shimmering relics beneath the flicker of candlelight, their beauty softened by shadow. They seem to glow not from within, but from memory, as though each piece still holds the breath of the hands that made it, the prayers of those who offered it, the grief of those who guarded it. The world changes, but their meaning does not. They remind us that every treasure, no matter how bright, was born of both devotion and danger. And so, from the sands of Egypt, the path of gold stretches outward, across deserts and oceans, following the footprints of empires and the dreams of conquerors. Where it travels, stories follow, of emeralds that bring sorrow, of jewels that ruin kings, of fortunes that vanish as if swallowed by time itself. Gold is never alone. It drags its shadows with it, wherever it goes. Let us follow that trail now, beyond the Nile and into the heat of another empire, one ruled by jewels rather than sand, where an emerald's green flame burned bright enough to curse those who claimed it. The story begins in the heart of India, where the air once shimmered with the scent of sandalwood and smoke, and the palaces of Delhi glowed under the soft flame of oil lamps. In those days, the Mughal Empire ruled with magnificence and mystery, its emperors cloaked in silk and surrounded by treasures so dazzling that poets called them the tears of the stars. Among these riches was said to be one of the most extraordinary jewels ever cut, a great emerald deep green as a forest after rain. Legends would one day call it the Delhi Emerald, though its true origin, like all enduring mysteries, has long been lost to time. Some say it was carved from the heart of a meteor that fell into the Indus Valley thousands of years ago, imbued with celestial power. Others claim it was a sacred relic of a Hindu temple, stolen during an age of conquest and blood. Whatever its birth, the emerald was destined to move through history like a silent witness, glowing with beauty, carrying the weight of every hand that claimed it. The first recorded mention of the jewel appears in the 16th century, during the reign of Emperor Humayun. The court chroniclers described an emerald the size of a dove's egg, inscribed with blessings and wrapped in golden silk. It was said to bring prosperity to its rightful ruler and misfortune to any who stole it. When Humayun fell from power, defeated and exiled, the emerald vanished. Some said it was taken by servants fleeing the burning palace. Others whispered that it was deliberately hidden to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. Years later, when Humayun returned to reclaim his throne, his first command was to recover his lost jewel. But the emerald never returned to him, not in life nor in death. Centuries passed, and Delhi itself changed rulers like a stage changes scenes. The emerald resurfaced again during the later Mughal era, glimmering in the treasury of Shah Jahan, the emperor who built the Taj Mahal. Some said he wore it as a talisman against betrayal. Yet betrayal found him all the same. Imprisoned by his own son in the Red Fort, Shah Jahan spent his final years staring across the river at the white tomb of his beloved queen. When his body was found, the emerald was gone once more. Those who had guarded it swore they had never seen it taken, but others whispered that it left the palace the night the emperor died, that it could not bear to stay in a place where love and power had broken. When the British Empire extended its reach into India, the jewel's legend traveled westward. Officers of the East India Company heard the stories of its strange misfortunes and laughed. Yet many were drawn to it all the same. In 1857, during the chaos of the Indian Rebellion, a British officer reportedly found a large emerald among the spoils of a ransacked treasury. He sent it to London, proud of his discovery. But before the jewel reached the coast, the officer fell ill with fever and died, delirious and raving about eyes in the dark that watched him as he slept. His effects were sold, and the emerald disappeared again, this time into the glittering maze of Victorian collectors and jewelers who treated artifacts not as sacred objects, but as curiosities of empire. By the late 19th century, the emerald appeared once more in London society, mounted in a pendant worn by a countess whose husband had made his fortune in India. She was photographed wearing it at a royal gathering, the stone burning brightly against her pale skin. Within a year, her husband was ruined by scandal, and she herself was found dead of an unexplained illness that baffled doctors. The pendant was passed on quietly to another collector, and soon afterward, his home was consumed by fire. Those who knew the stories called it coincidence. Others said the jewel had grown restless, longing for the soil of its homeland. The Delhi emerald became more legend than object, a story told in whispers at dinner tables and museums. Scholars debated whether it had ever truly existed or whether it was simply a composite of several different gems, each with its own history of loss and misfortune. But those who had seen it described a light within the stone, a kind of living pulse that made it feel almost aware. Its color was not just green, they said, but the green of things growing in shadow, rich, deep, eternal. What makes such legends endure is not the proof of their truth, but the pattern of their consequences. Each time the emerald changed hands, something was taken in return, a life, a fortune, a legacy. Its curse, if it can be called that, was not vengeance but balance. The universe's way of reminding those who sought beauty that beauty alone is never free. In its way, the emerald mirrors the fate of empire itself. Brilliance built upon blood, power shadowed by guilt. The British called their empire the jewel in the crown, but perhaps they too carried a curse, the same quiet retribution that haunts all who mistake possession for right. Even now, no one knows where the emerald lies. Some believe it was broken apart, its fragments sold separately to hide its identity. Others insist it still rests in the vault of a private collector, its glow dimmed, its legend sleeping but not dead. And in Delhi, where old streets twist through ruins and memory, there are those who say that on certain nights, when the wind passes over the river, a faint green glimmer can still be seen in the dark, a reminder that not all treasures wish to be found, and not all beauty brings peace. The emerald story, like the curse itself, does not end, it only changes shape. And as the shadows of empire fade into twilight, the memory of that glowing stone lingers, a soft echo of what happens when desire outlasts devotion. Now, the legend drifts eastward again, following the trade winds and merchant tales as stories travel when they refuse to die. It crosses seas and centuries, leaving traces of itself in other lands where treasure and danger still walk hand in hand. The journey of cursed riches continues, carried by ships, caravans, and dreams, whispers that stretch from India to the edge of the known world, waiting to be heard again. Stories travel the way rivers do, quietly, persistently, finding their own course through the landscapes of time. The tale of the Delhi Emerald, like the golden mask of Tutankhamun, did not stay where it began. It drifted, carried by sailors who had seen strange lights on the water, by merchants whose caravans wound through deserts heavy with the scent of spice and dust, by scholars who filled their journals with half-remembered legends heard over campfires in faraway lands. Long before printing presses and telegrams, stories were the world's first travelers, crossing borders more easily than armies ever could. And among them, few stories spread faster or more enduringly than those of treasure, and the curses said to guard it. From the harbors of Alexandria to the ports of Lisbon, from the caravan routes of Samarkand to the spice islands of the East, men carried not only goods but tales. A merchant might sell silk in Venice, and, over wine that evening, whisper of a jeweled idol in India that destroyed every thief who touched it. A sailor might describe a chest of coins found in a wreck near the African coast, coins that seemed to bring madness to those who counted them. A scholar might translate an inscription from an old temple, only to find its warning repeated in another language half a world away. Everywhere the words differed, but their heartbeat was the same. Some treasures do not wish to be owned. The Silk Road, that vast ribbon of trade linking east and west, became a highway not just for silk and gold, but for superstition and longing. Along its path, the same ideas took new forms. In Persia, travelers spoke of the cursed jewels of Darius, gems said to blind those who looked too long at their beauty. In the mountains of Tibet, there were murmurs of guardian spirits that avenged the theft of sacred relics. And by the time these tales reached the markets of Europe, they had changed again, shaped to fit new tongues, new fears, new faiths. There is something profoundly human about this migration of myth. A story of one cursed emerald becomes the story of a dozen others. A single tomb becomes 1,000 haunted graves. The details shift, but the rhythm stays, the promise of fortune followed by the shadow of loss. Perhaps this persistence says something about us, our belief that the world still holds secrets beyond our understanding, and that our actions, even the smallest ones, ripple through something greater than ourselves. As the centuries unfolded, explorers and conquerors began to follow in the footsteps of these whispered legends, seeking proof of the wonders they had heard. Maps filled with dotted lines leading to lost cities and hidden temples, places half imagined, half real. And in this blend of wonder and warning, the myth of the cursed treasure became more than folklore. It became a reflection of how humanity learns, forgets, and learns again. It is easy to think of these stories as superstition, relics of an age when the world was still half shadow. But in truth, they reveal something timeless about the way people see the unknown. For a merchant risking his life on a desert crossing, or a sailor steering through uncharted seas, a tale of a vengeful spirit was more than entertainment. It was a way to explain danger, to respect the boundaries between what could be taken and what should be left alone. To fear a curse was, in its own quiet way, to honor mystery. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the echo of those stories in today's world. In the hushed awe of museum visitors staring at relics behind glass, in the thrill of a documentary narrator describing ancient riches discovered beneath the earth. The words may have changed, the accents softened by time, but the fascination remains. We still look at gold and emerald, bone and clay, and wonder what eyes once saw them first, what prayers were whispered over them, what price was paid to bring them into the light. As the trade routes of old gave birth to new empires, these legends grew stronger, merging and multiplying. The curse of one forgotten idol might blend with the vengeance of another lost god, forming new myths to suit new conquerors. In medieval Europe, the tales of Eastern relics fused with Christian fears of sin and divine retribution. The result was a new kind of legend, treasures that were not merely haunted, but holy. Relics that glowed not with gold, but with grace and danger intertwined. And so, the stories shifted again from the markets of the East to the cathedrals and castles of the West. There, among stone altars and shadowed crypts, another kind of treasure waited, one bound not by royal blood or earthly wealth, but by faith itself. Holy relics, sacred chalices, fragments of the cross, each one believed to hold divine power, and each one, perhaps, guarded by something far greater than human hands. From here, the path leads into Europe's deepest vaults, where knights once knelt before their gods and swore to protect riches not of this world. The age of gold gives way to the age of devotion, and with it, another legend, of men who held both sword and secret, their faith as fierce as their fate. The treasures they kept were holy, but the shadows that followed them were dark indeed. The story now moves westward, into the heart of medieval Europe, where faith and fortune walked side by side, and where the greatest treasure of all was said to belong not to any king, but to God himself. In this world of stone cathedrals and burning candles, of knights who spoke their prayers before battle, one name still echoes with the weight of gold and mystery: the Knights Templar. They were warrior monks, sworn to poverty and to the cross, yet surrounded by rumors of immeasurable wealth. They guarded pilgrims on their way to the Holy Land, built fortresses that seemed to defy time, and carried secrets said to have been entrusted to them by heaven. And when they fell, the world whispered of a treasure hidden so well that even centuries could not unearth it. The Templars were founded in the 12th century, at a time when the Crusades drew thousands of men from Europe to the deserts of the Holy Land. Their mission was simple in words, but immense in spirit: to protect travelers and defend the sacred city of Jerusalem. Yet what began as a small band of knights grew into one of the most powerful orders in Christendom. They were soldiers, but also bankers, architects, diplomats. Their seal bore 2 men on a single horse, a symbol of humility, yet their influence soon rivaled that of kings. And with power came legend. In Jerusalem, beneath the ruins of Solomon's temple, the Templars were said to have dug deep tunnels during their early years. No one knows what they found there, but whispers spread across the centuries that they uncovered relics of the ancient world, sacred artifacts hidden since the time of the prophets. Some claimed they found the Ark of the Covenant, its gold still burning with divine fire. Others believed they discovered the Holy Grail, the cup used by Christ at the Last Supper, imbued with the power to heal or destroy. There were even darker murmurs that they uncovered forbidden scrolls, writings that could shake the foundations of the church itself. Whatever they found, it was enough to make the Templars both revered and feared. As their fame grew, so too did their riches. Pilgrims trusted the knights with their gold, leaving it in safekeeping before traveling to the Holy Land. In return, the Templars issued letters of credit, an early form of banking that allowed travelers to retrieve their wealth elsewhere. In time, their network stretched across continents, their treasuries filled with gold, silver, and relics. Yet their greatest treasure may have been knowledge, the hidden wisdom of what they discovered beneath the temple, passed through generations in symbols, rituals, and silence. But power invites envy, and faith can be twisted by greed. In the early 14th century, King Philip IV of France, drowning in debt to the Templars, saw an opportunity in their downfall. On Friday, October 13th, 1307, his soldiers stormed Templar commanderies across France, arresting hundreds of knights under the accusation of heresy. They were charged with worshipping idols, denying Christ, and practicing dark rites. The truth of these accusations has never been proven, but under torture, confessions flowed freely. The order was dissolved, its leaders executed, and its vast fortune vanished without a trace. When Grand Master Jacques de Molay was burned at the stake in 1314, he is said to have cursed both the king and the pope who condemned him, calling them to meet judgment before the year's end. And so it happened. Both men died within months. The Templar curse was born, not of supernatural wrath, perhaps, but of poetic justice that felt divine. The night of his death became legend, a fire that never truly went out. From that moment, the Templar treasure became one of history's greatest mysteries. Ships left the French port of La Rochelle days before the arrests, loaded with goods whose contents were never recorded. Some believe they carried the order's riches to Scotland, where sympathetic lords offered sanctuary. Others claim the treasure crossed the Atlantic centuries before Columbus, hidden in secret vaults beneath foreign soil. Still others say the gold was only a distraction, that the true treasure was wisdom, safeguarded through secret brotherhoods that endure to this day. Yet for all its allure, the Templar legend has always carried a shadow. Those who sought their hidden riches often met strange fates. Explorers lost in the mountains of southern France, scholars ruined by obsession, and treasure hunters who vanished into the caves of the Pyrenees. In every story, the pattern repeats. A promise of revelation followed by disappearance, as though the treasure itself refuses to be found. To walk among the ruins of a Templar chapel today is to feel that weight of silence. The air is cool, thick with memory. Stone arches rise like ribs of a sleeping giant, their carvings eroded by time, but still faintly alive. Candles flicker in corners where knights once knelt, their prayers echoing softly in the dark. You can almost imagine them standing watch, not over gold or jewels, but over something far more precious, a truth too sacred or too dangerous for the world to bear. Whether or not the Templar treasure ever existed in the form of glittering wealth, its story endures because it touches something eternal in the human heart, that tension between faith and ambition, purity and power. The knights swore oaths of devotion, yet were undone by greed. Not their own, but the greed of those who envied them. Their fall reminds us that even holiness can cast a shadow when touched by politics and fear. And so, like the treasures of Egypt and India before it, the Templar hoard remains both legend and lesson. It warns us that what we call a curse may simply be history's way of demanding balance, the world reclaiming what was taken in arrogance. Somewhere, perhaps beneath a ruined abbey or behind a sealed wall, the secret still sleeps, not waiting to be discovered, but to be understood. Outside, the night deepens. The echo of hooves fades into the wind, and the chapel's last candle burns low. The knights are gone, their names fading into prayer and dust. Yet their mystery endures, whispering through time, a promise of treasure, a warning of betrayal, and the eternal question of what faith is worth when faced with the glitter of the world. Time moves quietly after great legends fall. The noise of empires fades, the echo of hooves and swords dissolves into the long hum of wind and rain, and what was once burning with life becomes still. In the centuries after the Templars vanished, the world grew quieter about their secrets. The castles they built were reclaimed by ivy and moss, their vaults filled with dust and silence. And as it always does, the earth began to heal over what had been taken from it. Stories that once filled the hearts of kings became whispers for poets, scholars, and dreamers. There is a peculiar beauty in what time chooses to forget. The stones of ancient chapels hold warmth from the sun, but reveal nothing of the hands that placed them. Old maps, stained and torn, mark places where treasures might have slept, but their ink has faded until the words themselves seem uncertain. Perhaps this is mercy. The world cannot hold the weight of every secret at once. History must learn to rest. And yet, even as the dust settles, the memory of gold never fully dies. Somewhere, deep in the collective heart of humankind, the idea of hidden wealth and the danger that guards it continues to breathe. It becomes quieter, subtler, no longer the stuff of kings and knights, but of rumor, of lullabies told in small villages, of campfire tales shared among travelers. The curse becomes not an act of divine vengeance, but a kind of warning whispered by the land itself. Some things belong to silence. If you wander through Europe today, you might still find traces of these vanished centuries. A carved cross on a weathered stone wall, a symbol half buried in a monastery courtyard, a sealed passage beneath a crumbling chapel. But the people who pass these relics no longer see them as doorways to mystery. They walk over them lightly, as if history itself were a sleeping giant that must not be disturbed. The treasures that once inspired fear have become fragments of legend, resting at last in the shadows where they began. The Templar's story, like so many before it, began as devotion, grew into power, and ended in silence. And it is in that silence that something sacred happens, the transformation of myth into memory. When a legend grows too old to be believed, it softens into something else, a kind of dream that hums at the edge of the world's consciousness. People stop digging for gold, and instead they begin listening to the way wind moves through old ruins, to the creak of wood in forgotten towers, to the low murmur of rivers that still remember the paths of men long gone. In that listening, we begin to understand that perhaps the true curse of treasure is not punishment at all, but the endless hunger it leaves behind. For when the treasure is lost, what remains is longing, a longing so deep it can echo through generations. Those who sought the gold of the pharaohs, the emeralds of empire, the relics of the Templars, they are gone, yet their yearning endures, passed down like a candle's flame. It is the same longing that drives explorers into jungles, divers into the deep, and dreamers into the pages of ancient books. The centuries between the Templars and the next great legend are like the quiet between two breaths. Civilization shifts. Old empires crumble. New ones rise. The maps redraw themselves. The voices of monks give way to the cries of sailors. The treasures buried in holy soil are replaced by treasures lost beneath the sea or swallowed by the forest. Humanity's gaze turns outward again, across oceans and mountains, seeking what it once sought in temples and tombs, the promise of wonder, the shimmer of the unknown. And so, the silence begins to stir once more. The world prepares to dream again. Beyond the calm European fields, across the horizon where land meets the great blue vastness, another story waits. One born of sunlight on water, of gold gleaming beneath endless green, of a name whispered by explorers who mistook a legend for a destiny. The legend of El Dorado does not rise from stone or scripture, but from reflection, sunlight on rivers, illusions mistaken for miracles. It is a story of belief powerful enough to destroy those who hold it. And like every story before, it will remind us that the brightest treasures cast the darkest shadows. The silence breaks. The winds shift. The world breathes again, and the dream of gold is reborn. They called it El Dorado, the Golden One. A city, a man, a kingdom, a dream. It began as a whisper carried across the ocean by those who claimed to have glimpsed impossible light deep within the jungles of the New World. The first Spanish explorers spoke of a ruler so wealthy that he covered his body in gold dust each morning, then bathed in a sacred lake to wash it away, an act of both devotion and decadence. His city, they said, was made of pure gold, temples whose walls gleamed like the sun, streets paved with treasure, and altars heavy with ornaments that caught fire in the daylight. It was a vision too radiant for reason, too grand for the world that existed. But belief, once lit, has a way of spreading faster than truth. The tale of El Dorado arrived in Europe like a fever. Men who had once chased saints and relics now chased sunlight and metal. They crossed the Atlantic not in pilgrimage, but in hunger, drawn by the promise of a city that could turn mortal men into gods. They sailed through storms, marched through jungles, and scaled mountains that seemed to reach into the sky, always hearing, just beyond the next ridge or river, that someone else had seen it. But El Dorado was always one horizon away. The dream never stopped moving. At first, the Spaniards believed the city lay somewhere in the lands of the Muisca people, high in the Andes of present-day Colombia. There, on the shores of Lake Guatavita, rituals of gold were indeed performed, ceremonies meant to honor the gods of the lake. The chief, coated in sacred dust, would offer emeralds and golden ornaments to the waters, gifts to the divine. When conquistadors learned of this, they saw not faith, but fortune. They drained the lake in hopes of finding its glittering bottom. What they discovered was not the wealth of a god, but the reflection of their own obsession. The gold they found was real, but small, scattered, humble. The city of gold remained a mirage. As decades passed, the legend grew stranger. Each failed expedition only seemed to feed it. Some said El Dorado had moved south, hidden by the gods to protect it from greedy hands. Others claimed it lay deep within the Amazon, surrounded by rivers that devoured men whole. Explorers vanished one after another, their names fading into the mist. Francisco de Orellana followed the great river itself, hoping it would lead him to the Golden Kingdom, but he found only endless green and death. Sir Walter Raleigh, an Englishman dreaming of empire, led his own search a century later, describing lakes so wide they mirrored the heavens and mountains that shimmered as if the sun had been trapped in stone. He returned empty-handed, yet convinced that he had stood on the edge of paradise. The more the world sought El Dorado, the less it seemed to exist. And yet, the less it existed, the more beautiful it became. For every failure, there was a story of hidden temples, of rivers glowing under moonlight, of native guides who smiled but said nothing, as though they knew that the true treasure was not meant to be found. Each myth layered upon the last, until El Dorado became less a place and more a mirror reflecting the souls of those who sought it. The jungle, too, seemed to conspire in the illusion. Its green canopy swallowed footsteps, its rivers erased trails. Ancient ruins appeared and disappeared between seasons. Even when maps were drawn and routes were traced, the land shifted like a living thing, reshaping itself to keep its secrets. There were explorers who swore they heard voices in the trees, others who claimed the gold itself spoke to them in dreams. Madness, perhaps, or something older, a presence woven into the roots and rivers. And so, the curse of El Dorado was not the wrath of any god or spirit, but something subtler, the consuming hunger for more. Those who sought it often met the same fate: starvation, disease, betrayal. Men turned on each other in the wilderness, their eyes reflecting both sunlight and despair. The jungle gave nothing freely, and the gold, when it appeared, only deepened the madness. It gleamed from riverbeds and from the hands of the indigenous people who wore it not as wealth, but as symbol. To them, gold was the color of the sun, a bridge between the human and the divine. To the conquerors, it was a promise of immortality. And that, perhaps, was the greatest misunderstanding of all. In the quiet of night, when the fires of their camps dimmed and the forest murmured like an ocean of leaves, some of those explorers must have realized what they were chasing. Not a city, not gold, but a story, the oldest kind of story, one that could never truly be captured. The kind that leads a person deeper into the world and, in the end, deeper into themselves. When dawn came, the illusion would return. The sun would rise, and the trees would shine, and someone would say they saw something glimmering in the distance. And again, the men would move forward, driven by the same dream that had carried the Templars to the desert and the pharaohs to their tombs. The dream that beauty, once touched, can be possessed. Even now, centuries later, El Dorado still calls to those who dream with their eyes open. Archaeologists and adventurers still wander through Colombia, Venezuela, and Brazil, tracing old paths, uncovering fragments of gold shaped by hands that belonged to civilizations long gone. Yet the city remains hidden, perhaps because it was never made of stone and metal, but of belief itself. Every generation remakes it, paints it in its own colors, imagines it just beyond reach. And in that sense, El Dorado is the purest of all treasures. Not a curse that punishes greed, but a dream that reveals it. The jungle still keeps its secret, whispering softly beneath the canopy. The true gold was never in the earth, but in the light that touched it, and in the hearts of those who dared to follow. When the fever of gold began to fade, and the jungle reclaimed the bones of the men who had sought it, a softer kind of silence returned to the world. The age of exploration had brought not just riches, but exhaustion, the weight of dreams pursued too far. Yet even as the maps filled and the edges of the world grew smaller, the hunger for discovery did not die. It simply changed its shape. The new explorers were no longer conquistadors in armor, but scholars and archaeologists with notebooks and brushes, listening to the quiet stories buried in the earth. In this gentler era, the myths of treasure transformed. The promise of gold became the promise of understanding, that through ruins and relics, humanity might recover pieces of itself. But as the old tales returned to light, so too did their shadows. Every excavation unearthed not only artifacts, but questions, and sometimes something darker. There were still places that resisted being touched, places where even the most rational of men felt the air grow heavy and strange. Among those who chased these echoes was a British explorer named Percy Fawcett, a man of immense conviction and quiet obsession. He believed that somewhere within the dense, unmapped forests of Brazil lay the remains of a lost civilization, a city older and more advanced than anything yet known, hidden beneath centuries of green. He called it Z. To him, it was not the gold that mattered, but the knowledge, proof that the Amazon had once been home to greatness, not savagery. He read ancient manuscripts, collected tales from tribes, and studied pottery fragments that spoke of a vanished people. Every clue pointed him deeper into the jungle, until the line between history and myth blurred completely. In 1925, Fawcett embarked on what would become his final expedition, accompanied by his son Jack and a friend named Raleigh Rimmel. The three men disappeared into the forest, never to be seen again. No trace of them was ever found. No bones, no camp, no journals. For nearly a century, their fate has remained one of exploration's most enduring mysteries. Some say they were killed by hostile tribes. Others believe they succumbed to disease or madness. There are even those who whisper that they found the city they sought and chose never to return, swallowed by its eternal secret. The story of Fawcett carries a strange symmetry, the echo of El Dorado transposed into the modern world. The jungle still guards its treasures, but the curse now takes the shape of obsession rather than divine punishment. What destroyed the conquistadors through greed destroyed Fawcett through belief. He was a man of science, but the deeper he went, the more mystical his writings became. He spoke of energies, of ancient wisdom, of powers beyond comprehension. His journey became a pilgrimage, and the forest a cathedral that could consume the faithful. Those who followed him, and there were many, found only fragments. A compass here, a rusted machete there, all swallowed by the relentless green. Each new expedition added to the myth rather than solved it. Some explorers claim to have found ruins that could have been great earthen mounds and causeways hidden beneath the canopy. Modern satellite imaging even suggests that vast ancient networks once existed in the Amazon basin, lending truth to Fawcett's vision. But the mystery remains incomplete, as though the jungle itself insists on keeping its final word. The legend of Fawcett reminds us that not all treasures are meant to be possessed. Some are meant to be sought, not found, their power lying in the pursuit itself. The forests he vanished into are still there, their sounds unchanged, their shadows deep. If you walk among them, you might hear the same quiet music that drew him forward, the rhythm of water over stone, the whisper of wind in the leaves, the faint, constant heartbeat of the earth. There is something hauntingly eternal about these places that swallow men whole. The jungle does not kill in anger. It simply absorbs, returning all things to its endless cycle of life and decay. In that way, it acts as nature's most ancient guardian, not cursed, but sacred, preserving what the world is not yet ready to rediscover. And perhaps that is what connects all these legends, from the tombs of Egypt to the cathedrals of Europe, from the deserts of India to the depths of the Amazon. Every treasure, every mystery is not only about what lies buried, but about what remains unseen within us. The explorers who chase these secrets are drawn by something far older than greed. They are answering a call, a longing to touch the infinite, to glimpse the face of the unknown and find, reflected there, a truth about themselves. But the unknown does not yield easily. It watches, it waits, it decides when and if it wishes to be found. Those who push too far are not punished. They are simply taken, folded back into the great story from which all others spring. Fawcett's compass still points somewhere, though we can no longer follow it. The forest hums softly, as if in prayer, and the world listens. Beyond that green silence lies the next mystery, one carved not in vines or gold, but in sand, a story of ancient winds and buried kingdoms that even time itself could not erase. The desert waits now, endless and patient, holding in its heart another treasure, another curse. The desert stretches endlessly beneath a white sun, its horizon a trembling mirage where light itself seems to waver between what is real and what is remembered. In the stillness, even the wind carries a sense of age, as if it has spent centuries whispering over dunes, through ruins, through the hollow bones of empires swallowed by time. Here, gold does not shine in rivers or coins, but in the sand itself, each grain a fragment of forgotten glory. This is the kingdom of silence, where the earth keeps its deepest secrets beneath layers of dust and history. And among all its mysteries, none captures the imagination like the lost city of Ubar, the Atlantis of the sands. For centuries, poets and travelers spoke of Ubar, a place of immense wealth and divine punishment. The Quran called it Iram of the Pillars, a city whose people defied the will of God and were buried beneath the desert as a lesson to mankind. To medieval scholars, it was a cautionary tale. To explorers, it was a challenge. They called it the City of 1,000 Pillars, built by a tribe who grew too proud, too powerful, and too deaf to the whispers of humility. The winds of time erased it, or so it seemed, leaving only sand and the uneasy feeling that something vast and ancient slept beneath. When early European explorers heard of Ubar from Bedouin storytellers, they dismissed it as myth, a mirage born from heat and hope. But myths have a way of waiting for the right listener. In the 20th century, with satellites circling above the Earth, technology itself began to chase the ghost of Ubar. In the early 1990s, a team led by adventurer Ranulph Fiennes and NASA archaeologists used radar imaging to trace ancient caravan routes across the Arabian Peninsula. These paths, invisible to the eye, revealed where traders once crossed the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter, the largest sand desert on Earth. And there, at the end of one forgotten route, they found what seemed to be the remains of towers and walls, a city long buried, its stones collapsing into the dunes. They called it Shizr, and those scholars still debate whether it truly was Ubar. Something about the discovery felt mythic. The site revealed a fortress built upon a sinkhole, its foundations swallowed when the ground gave way, as though the desert itself had claimed it. It was an ending eerily close to the old legends, a city swallowed whole for its arrogance. To believers, it was proof that the ancient story was true. To skeptics, it was coincidence wrapped in poetry. But to those who stood among the ruins at twilight, watching the last light fade into the dunes, it felt like standing at the edge of two worlds, one of history, one of myth. In the quiet of that desert, time behaves differently. Days pass like waves. Nights stretch endlessly, cold and infinite. The stars above are so many that they seem to hum. Travelers who camp among the dunes often speak of strange sensations. The feeling of being watched, the sound of voices carried on the wind, the sense that the land itself remembers. In Bedouin lore, spirits called jinns still wander the empty quarter, guardians or prisoners of whatever sleeps beneath. Some say that Ubar was not destroyed by sand or by God, but by its own people, who made pacts with unseen forces for wealth and power beyond human understanding. The price, as always, was everything. It is a familiar story, the rise and fall of those who sought to master what should only be revered. From Egypt's tombs to the temples of the East, from the jungles of South America to the deserts of Arabia, humanity's greatest treasures have always come with a warning. And yet, the warning is never enough. The desert seems to test that lesson again and again, each generation hearing the same echo, that beauty and ruin are never far apart. Modern archaeologists who study Ubar describe a city that once thrived on trade, a crossroads of frankincense and myrrh, where caravans passed through carrying perfume and prayer. Its towers shone with light in the distance, guiding travelers through the emptiness. It was not just a city of gold, but of connection, a place where faith, commerce, and ambition met. But the same sands that gave it life also buried it. Water, once plentiful, ran dry. The routes changed. The towers fell. And in the end, all that remained was wind. Standing among those ruins, one begins to understand the nature of the curse that clings to such places. It is not the wrath of gods or spirits, but the silence of memory, the quiet, patient reclaiming of all things by the world that bore them. The desert does not rage or destroy. It simply waits. It covers what has been forgotten, and in doing so, keeps it safe. What appears as punishment might, in truth, be preservation. At night, when the temperature falls and the stars gleam cold and distant, the air around the ruins grows still. If you listen, the dunes seem to breathe, an ancient rhythm, older than language. It is easy to imagine that the sands remember the laughter of markets, the echo of prayers, the cry of camels crossing under moonlight. The city may be gone, but its story remains etched into the silence. And like every legend before it, Ubar's fate speaks softly of a deeper truth, that all civilizations, no matter how bright, must one day yield to the calm of the earth. The same forces that built their towers will one day scatter their dust. It is not cruelty, but balance. The desert does not destroy to punish, it buries to renew. As dawn approaches, the dunes glow faintly gold, as if the city beneath still dreams of sunlight. The wind carries its name, not as a word, but as a sigh. And somewhere, far beyond the horizon, another traveler begins to follow that sound, chasing what remains unseen. For the sands, after all, are never truly empty. They only appear so until one learns how to listen. And when you do, you begin to hear the faint echoes of another place, another mystery, a treasure not hidden beneath sand, but beneath stone, deep within the frozen heart of the north. Far from the heat and shimmer of the desert, where the world's edges are lined not with dunes but with ice, there lies another kind of silence, one that does not whisper, but watches. The Arctic is a world of white and shadow, where time itself seems to freeze, and where secrets are not buried in sand, but entombed in frost. It is here, amid the endless snow and the slow creak of glaciers, that another legend has taken shape, not of gold or emerald, but of something stranger, a treasure made of time itself. In the 19th century, as the great age of exploration reached its coldest frontier, men turned their eyes northward. The Arctic was the last uncharted mystery, the place where the maps ended. Among these explorers was Sir John Franklin, a British naval officer driven by duty and pride to complete one of history's final quests, the search for the Northwest Passage, a sea route linking the Atlantic and Pacific through the frozen labyrinth of the Canadian North. To find it meant to conquer nature itself, to carve a line through the white silence of the world. In 1845, Franklin set sail with two ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, and a crew of 129 men. They were equipped with the finest technology of their time: iron-reinforced hulls, canned provisions for years, and instruments to map the uncharted. They left England to cheers and banners, their decks gleaming beneath summer sunlight. Then the Arctic closed around them, and they vanished. For years, nothing was heard. Search expeditions followed, each finding fragments, but never the whole. A broken boat here, a note there, graves marked with names and dates. The ships had become trapped in ice. The men, starving and desperate, tried to march south. Some accounts spoke of madness, of mutiny, of things best left unspoken. By the time rescuers pieced the story together, all 129 were gone. The Arctic had taken them, one by one, and kept their story frozen in its heart. To those who found their remains, it seemed less a tragedy than a haunting. The tundra gave up only glimpses, skeletons still in uniform, journals written in shaky hands, relics perfectly preserved by cold, teacups, buttons, a pocket watch that had stopped as if time itself had taken pity. The Inuit, who had lived with the land for generations, spoke of strange lights and spirits near the wrecks, of men walking across the ice long after they should have been dead. To them, the Arctic was alive, a place of balance where those who entered without respect were bound to vanish. And yet, even in loss, the Franklin expedition became its own kind of treasure. It drew explorers for over a century, each one hoping to find the missing ships, to solve the final riddle. Generations searched, guided by fragments of bone, stories, and intuition. In 2014, after 169 years, the first ship, the Erebus, was found beneath the icy waters near King William Island. 2 years later, Terror was discovered almost perfectly preserved, resting silently on the ocean floor, as though still waiting for orders. Inside were tables, instruments, and sealed doors, untouched since the day the ice closed around them. The Arctic had not destroyed them. It had kept them. But there was something unsettling about how intact the ships were, as if they had been preserved not by accident, but by intention. Divers who explored the wrecks described an eerie stillness, a sense that the cold itself was watching. Some spoke of the uncanny quiet that filled the ship's corridors, of seeing their own reflections move slightly out of sync. Rational minds dismissed it as pressure, cold, or nerves. But in places like this, where the earth itself holds its breath, reason sometimes falters. Perhaps the Arctic's greatest secret is its patience. Everything that enters it, ships, bones, dreams, eventually becomes part of it. Nothing truly disappears. The ice keeps its promises. It waits until the world has forgotten, then returns what was lost, perfectly preserved, as a reminder of both wonder and warning. The Franklin story, like that of the Pharaohs and the Templars, is not just about treasure or tragedy. It is about how nature receives what man refuses to respect. Even now, as the Arctic melts and new explorers walk where Franklin's men perished, the same questions remain. What drives us to chase the unreachable? What compels us to enter places that whisper, turn back? The ice gives no answer, only reflection. In its mirrored surface, we see our own restless spirit, our refusal to be content with the known. And perhaps that is the real curse of exploration. Not death, but endless desire. The Arctic nights are long. For half the year, the sun disappears entirely, leaving only the cold glow of stars and aurora dancing like silent fire. It is easy, under that light, to believe that the world is still young, that somewhere beneath the ice there are stories yet untold. The Erebus and Terror lie there now, dreaming in the dark, their decks covered in frost, their shadows stretching into eternity. And as the northern wind hums over the frozen sea, it carries the same truth that has whispered through every age. All that we seek, all that we lose, eventually finds its way home. For even the coldest silence in time gives back its secrets, just as the desert once did, and the jungle before it. But where one story ends, another always begins. And the next would rise not from ice or sand, but from the heart of fire, from mountains that burn and temples that sleep, holding treasures forged in molten earth and protected by myths older than the world itself. The cold in the far north does not simply exist. It breathes. It moves across the ice like a living thing, curling around mountains of frozen glass, whispering across the bones of ships long lost to time. In the Arctic, silence is not the absence of sound. It is the weight of eternity pressing against the air. There, the world feels suspended between life and death, motion and stillness, the known and the unknowable. And within that white abyss, the line between history and legend fades like a footprint in snow. Long before explorers carved their routes through it, the Arctic was already sacred to those who lived on its edge. The Inuit and other northern peoples saw the ice not as emptiness, but as spirit, alive, conscious, and watchful. They spoke of Sedna, the goddess of the sea, who ruled over the creatures of the deep and guarded the balance between man and nature. Her realm was both beautiful and cruel, giving life through the hunt and taking it away when respect was forgotten. The cold, they said, was her voice, a reminder that survival here was not conquest, but coexistence. When the age of European exploration began, that ancient understanding was forgotten. The frozen world became, to outsiders, a frontier to be conquered, a white riddle waiting to be solved. Among those who chased its secret was Sir John Franklin, a man whose ambition burned bright against the endless night. His ships, the Erebus and the Terror, were marvels of their age, reinforced with iron, outfitted with steam engines, stocked with years of provisions. To the men aboard, the voyage seemed destined for glory. They carried banners of empire and the confidence of reason. But the Arctic, indifferent and immense, did not bend to human will. As the ships entered the ice-choked labyrinth of the Northwest Passage, the weather turned. The sun dimmed, the air hardened, the sea froze, trapping the vessels in place. At first, the men waited, believing the thaw would come. But the thaw never did. Months passed. The stores of food began to spoil. The compasses faltered. The white horizon closed around them like a wall. They were swallowed not by storm or wave, but by stillness. The journal entries that survived grow increasingly frantic, their neat handwriting unraveling into despair. All hope abandoned, one note read. Others spoke of sickness, of lead poisoning from canned rations, of frostbite and fear. Then the words stop altogether. Silence claims the rest. By the time later searchers pieced the fragments together, the picture was clear. 129 men lost, scattered across the ice, some frozen where they fell, others driven to madness and starvation. The Arctic had taken them, as it had taken so many before. But what made this tragedy different was how completely the ice preserved it. For over a century, the remains of the Erebus and Terror slept beneath the frozen sea, untouched, their cabins still neat, their instruments unbroken. When divers finally found them in the 21st century, it was as if time itself had paused in mid-breath. In one cabin, a desk remained upright, its drawers still closed. A wine bottle stood half full, sealed by frost. The wheel of the ship was intact, its ropes coiled neatly, as though waiting for the captain's return. There's something profoundly unsettling about such perfect preservation. The Arctic did not decay what it devoured. It held it in suspension. It did not destroy. It remembered. Scientists called it an extraordinary natural phenomenon, but those who descended into the wreck spoke of a feeling that words could not describe. The sense of being inside a memory, as if the place itself were alive. One diver, emerging from the water, whispered that it felt as though the ship knew they were there. Rational minds dismissed it, of course, but in the stillness of the deep, reason often loses its voice. The Inuit tell another version. They say the land remembers everything it touches, every footstep, every prayer, every death. To disturb what has been claimed by the ice is to awaken the spirit that guards it. In this view, The Franklin expedition was not cursed by bad fortune, but by imbalance, by the arrogance of men who sought to master what was never meant to be mastered. The Arctic, they say, exacts no vengeance. It simply restores the order. When you look at the photographs of those frozen landscapes today, the pale blue light, the long shadows stretching over snow, you can almost feel that quiet judgment. The Arctic is not cruel, but it is absolute. It demands humility. It gives nothing freely, not even knowledge. The explorers sought a passage through the ice, but what they found was a mirror reflecting the truth of human desire, our endless need to reach beyond ourselves, even when the world tells us to stop. In a way, Franklin's lost expedition has become its own treasure, not of gold or jewels, but of meaning. The wrecks beneath the ice are time capsules of an age when humanity believed itself invincible. They are reminders that discovery and destruction often walk hand in hand, that even the pursuit of glory can lead us into silence. And still, the Arctic watches. The ships rest in darkness, the aurora gliding like slow fire above them. Sometimes, when a northern wind rises, it sounds like distant voices calling across the ice, too soft to understand, too human to ignore. Whether they're the echoes of Franklin's men or simply the sigh of shifting glaciers, no one can say. But those who have heard it never forget it. The world is warming now. The ice that kept the past preserved begins to melt, and as it does, it releases what it held. Relics, bones, secrets. The Arctic silence breaks, piece by piece. Perhaps it is no coincidence that this happens now, when humanity again stands on the edge of its own hunger, for power, for progress, for control. The story of the North returns to remind us that nothing is ever truly lost, only waiting to be found when we are ready to listen. And soon, the tale will move from frost to flame, from the cold hush of the poles to lands where the earth itself breathes fire. There, too, lie treasures forged by gods and guarded by legends. Volcanoes that glow beneath the stars, temples carved into mountains, and gold that still burns with the memory of creation. The ice exhales one final sigh as we turn away, leaving its stillness behind. The next journey begins where the world trembles, where the ground is alive and the air smells faintly of smoke and mystery. There are places on Earth where the ground itself seems to breathe, where the soil pulses with hidden heat, and where the air hums faintly with the sound of creation. These are the lands of fire, volcanic worlds where the ancient veins of the planet still glow with molten memory. If the Arctic was a frozen mirror of the past, then this is the Earth's beating heart, a place where destruction and rebirth are indistinguishable, and where the boundaries between myth and geology blur into shimmering waves of heat. In these fiery lands, humanity has always seen both promise and peril, for fire is the first god we ever worshipped, and perhaps the last we will ever understand. High in the mountains of the Aegean, beneath a sky that glows copper at dusk, lies the island of Santorini, once called Thera. Today, it is a paradise of whitewashed houses and sapphire seas. But thousands of years ago, it was the site of one of the greatest natural catastrophes in human history. Around 1600 BCE, the island erupted with a force so vast that it tore itself apart, sending shockwaves across the known world. The explosion was 4 times more powerful than Krakatoa. Entire settlements vanished beneath ash, the sea boiled, and for days the sun itself dimmed. Yet from that devastation arose one of history's most enduring mysteries, the lost civilization of Atlantis. The philosopher Plato wrote of a great island kingdom that sank beneath the waves in a single day and night of misfortune. Scholars have debated for centuries whether Atlantis was myth or memory, but the eruption of Thera offers a haunting parallel. Beneath the volcanic rock, archaeologists have uncovered the ancient city of Akrotiri, preserved almost perfectly in layers of ash, like Pompeii in miniature. Frescoes show ships, festivals, and a culture of wealth and grace. The people vanished suddenly, leaving their cups and tools in place, as though they had fled mid-meal. The city sleeps beneath the lava still, a ghost suspended in silence. Standing at the caldera's edge today, one can feel the breath of the volcano beneath the feet, a slow, deep rhythm, steady and eternal. The sea fills the crater where the mountain once stood, a perfect circle of blue. Locals say the waters are cursed, that beneath them lies the heart of a god. Scientists call it geothermal activity, but those who live here speak of voices beneath the waves, whispering when the wind is still. The island's beauty feels too deliberate, too alive, as if born not merely of chance but of sacrifice. Thera is not the only place where fire guards its treasures. Across the world, on the slopes of Mount Etna, in Sicily, legends tell of Vulcan, the Roman god of the forge, who crafted weapons for the gods in his fiery workshop deep within the earth. In Japan, Mount Fuji rises like a spirit from the mist, worshipped for centuries as a sacred being, a gateway between the mortal and the divine. In Hawaii, the goddess Pele dances through lava flows, her temper as unpredictable as the molten rivers she commands. To the ancients, these volcanoes were not simply geological features. They were living beings, angry, wise, and ancient beyond measure. Every culture that lived in their shadow told stories of hidden wealth buried in fire. Gold veins melted and reformed, gems crystallized in heat, metals hardened by the breath of the earth. To seek such treasures meant courting danger, for the same fire that forged them could destroy without mercy. Legends tell of miners swallowed by eruptions, of entire villages buried in ash when greed outpaced reverence. Even in modern times, scientists who study active volcanoes speak of the uncanny feeling that the land is watching them, listening to every footstep. Perhaps the most haunting of all volcanic mysteries lies beneath the Italian town of Naples, the Phlegrean Fields. Here, beneath the quiet hills and vineyards, lies a massive dormant supervolcano, large enough to change the face of continents if it ever awakens. Ancient Romans called this place Campi Phlegreae, the burning fields, and believed it was the entrance to the underworld. Temples still stand near the sulfur vents, their stones stained yellow by centuries of fumes. It was said that this was where heroes descended to meet the dead, where Aeneas entered to speak to his father, where Orpheus sang his way into Hades. The air smells of brimstone, the ground is warm to the touch, and in the stillness, the earth seems to exhale softly, like something asleep but dreaming. Modern science can measure the tremors and gases, but the feeling remains the same: awe, fear, reverence. To stand near such a place is to sense the pulse of the planet, a heartbeat slow and deep, older than all history. These are not places of punishment, though legends have long cast them as cursed. They are reminders of what lies beneath every calm surface, the unending motion of creation. Fire consumes, but it also renews. From volcanic ash grow the most fertile soils. From destruction, new worlds are born. Yet humanity has always been drawn to the edge of danger. We build our homes near volcanoes, mine their slopes for rare minerals, and marvel at their eruptions even as we flee them. Perhaps it is because, in their raw power, we see a reflection of ourselves, our capacity for both creation and ruin. The ancients offered sacrifices to appease these fiery gods. Today we offer curiosity, science, and cameras. But beneath the rational explanations, something ancient still stirs. The same trembling awe that our ancestors felt when they looked into a crater and saw the Earth's heart glowing red. As night falls over these volcanic lands, the air cools, the stars shimmer, and from the crater's depths comes a faint, rhythmic sound, not unlike breathing. The fire sleeps, but it never truly rests. It waits, patient and eternal, a reminder that all things return to the source from which they came. And somewhere in that glowing heart, beneath stone and flame, the earth keeps secrets even older than Atlantis, stories written not in words, but in heat, pressure, and time. When morning comes, the mists rise from the caldera, curling like smoke over the sea. The horizon glows faintly gold, and as the light spreads, it beckons once more, leading us from the heart of fire to another mystery, one not forged by earth or ice, but by human hands and faith, the sacred treasures of temples and shrines, where devotion and danger are bound together in silence. Among the mountains, forests, and deserts of the world, there are places where humanity itself has become the guardian of treasures, not gold hidden by nature, nor artifacts swallowed by ice or ash, but objects imbued with sacred power and the weight of devotion. Temples, shrines, and monasteries have long housed these treasures, their walls echoing with prayers, chants, and the quiet footsteps of worshippers. They are places where faith meets fear, where reverence and greed walk in narrow path together, and where the line between blessing and curse is as thin as incense, smoke rising into shadowed halls. Take, for example, the temples of Southeast Asia. Deep in Cambodia, the ruins of Angkor Wat rise from the jungle, a vast labyrinth of stone carved with intricate reliefs of gods, kings, and legends. The temple was built as both palace and place of worship, a reflection of the divine authority of the Khmer kings. Within its sanctuaries, priests once stored precious icons, gold leaf offerings, and sacred manuscripts. For centuries, the forest reclaimed much of the complex, concealing treasures within its roots and vines. Those who entered without understanding risked both the wrath of the gods and the treacherous ruins themselves. Over time, stories emerged of hidden chambers and secret idols, of explorers who vanished while seeking artifacts. The curse was never written in ink, but lived in the silent warning carried by the shadows and the vines. Far to the north, in Tibet, the monasteries perched on cliffs contain relics older than many nations themselves. Scrolls, statues, and sacred instruments are kept in locked rooms, their guardians believing that these objects hold spiritual energy capable of both blessing and harming. Legends speak of monks who disappeared mysteriously after attempting to steal such treasures, of visions and illnesses that followed those who acted with greed. Here, the curse is not supernatural in the ordinary sense. It is the consequence of breaking the sacred balance, of treating devotion as possession. The mountains themselves, silent and immense, are witnesses to the deeds of those who enter with impure intent. In Japan, the temples of Kyoto and Nara conceal treasures of immense historical and spiritual value. Bronze statues of Buddha, golden scrolls, and ceremonial objects are often protected by not only walls, but also the weight of tradition and secrecy. Stories tell of thieves who tried to carry away the sacred relics, only to be found hours later, unconscious or unexplainably changed. Sometimes the curse is whispered in poetry, in legends written for children to remember. Respect what was given, and you shall be protected. Take lightly, and the earth will reclaim it. The line between myth and warning blurs, as it has across centuries and continents. Even in Europe, the relics of saints and monarchs were treated with the same awe and fear. In medieval cathedrals, golden reliquaries contained bones, teeth, and fragments of cloth. They were said to hold divine power, capable of miracles for those who approached with humility. Yet those who sought to steal them often met untimely ends, falling from towers, being struck by lightning, or succumbing to inexplicable illness. In these stories, the curse was less a tale of vengeance than a reflection of human reverence for the sacred, a warning to respect what was greater than oneself. Across continents, the pattern is the same. Where humanity places value on the sacred, it creates both a treasure and a guardian. The curse may not be written in any scroll or inscribed in stone, but it exists nonetheless, in the vigilance of monks, the vigilance of tradition, and the silence that shrouds what must not be disturbed. Treasures of faith are more than objects. They are the embodiment of belief, and belief, when broken, carries its own consequences. There's a certain quiet majesty to these places. Step into a temple at dawn, when light filters through latticed windows, and you can hear centuries of devotion in the hum of wind through stone corridors. Candles flicker, and the air smells faintly of incense and aged wood. Each shadow seems to hold a story, each carved figure a warning. The treasures are not meant to be plundered. They are meant to be witnessed, honored, and left in peace. And yet, the temptation is universal. The same human curiosity and desire that drew explorers to deserts, jungles, and ice fields also draws pilgrims and adventurers into sacred spaces. The difference is subtle. In some places, the world itself enforces the law. In others, it is faith, tradition, and the weight of centuries that guard the treasure. The lesson is repeated everywhere. Reverence is a shield, and greed a key to misfortune. As night falls over these sacred halls, the shadows stretch long and calm. The treasures lie in silence, undisturbed, waiting for those who will approach with patience and humility. And when one listens closely, even the air seems to hum with an unspoken promise. The rewards of respect, the dangers of desire, and the eternal mystery of what is meant to remain beyond our grasp. From the temples of Southeast Asia to the monasteries of Tibet, from Japan's ancient shrines to Europe's hallowed cathedrals, the story is clear. Some treasures are guarded not by curses of magic, but by the weight of history, devotion, and human understanding. They teach a lesson older than gold, that the greatest power often lies not in possession, but in reverence. And as the candlelight dims, the stone corridors echo softly, reminding us that even the quietest treasures can speak, if only we listen. The journey through history, from frozen seas to volcanic calderas, from hidden temples to lost cities, leads inevitably to reflection. By now, the stories of vanished empires, explorers swallowed by ice, treasure-laden deserts, and sacred shrines have all begun to coalesce into a pattern, one that is at once both inspiring and cautionary. Across time and continents, humanity has always been drawn to treasures, whether material or spiritual, and equally, the allure of the unknown has always carried a weight. These are not merely tales of gold, gems, or artifacts. They are stories about the human heart, its curiosity, its longing, and its willingness to risk everything for a glimpse of something greater than itself. What strikes the mind most profoundly is the quiet symmetry between wealth and danger, desire and consequence. The pharaoh's tombs promised immortality, but guarded it with traps and curses. The Templars' riches vanished in a legend, accompanied by whispers of divine retribution. El Dorado lured explorers into the jungle, where obsession became their undoing. The lost city of Ubar was swallowed by sand, and Franklin's ships were frozen into eternal silence. Even sacred temples reminded the faithful that reverence was the path to reward, while greed often led to misfortune. Across these narratives, one sees the eternal tension. The brighter the treasure shines, the darker its shadows. Yet there is also a quiet hope woven into these tales. For every expedition that ended in loss, there was another that yielded discovery, knowledge, or inspiration. Akrotiri rose from volcanic ash to teach us about Bronze Age life. Satellite imagery uncovered the footprints of ancient Ubar, giving us glimpses into trade and culture long forgotten. The Franklin ships, finally revealed after centuries, brought with them insights into human endurance, preparation, and the unforgiving nature of the Arctic. Even failed quests leave behind lessons, whispers of human ingenuity, and a reminder of the delicate balance between ambition and humility. In this reflection, one begins to understand that the true treasure is rarely what lies buried or hidden. It is the journey itself, the exploration of unfamiliar lands, the crossing of deserts and jungles, the listening to stories passed down through generations. Each step taken by the adventurers, scholars, and pilgrims connects us to the past in a way that mere possession never could. These journeys remind us that wonder is not measured in gold or gems, but in the capacity to imagine, to endure, and to learn from the world in all its peril and beauty. There's also a subtle poetry in the way nature and history intersect. Ice preserves, sand buries, fire transforms, and stone endures. Each element becomes both guardian and storyteller, revealing lessons only to those who approach with patience and reverence. The treasures of the world are not simply prizes to be claimed. They are mirrors reflecting humanity's virtues and flaws. They speak softly of mortality, ambition, and the fragile thread connecting past to present. The stories of ancient curses, lost empires, and hidden treasures, when told slowly and with care, also have a calming rhythm. Their cadence, measured by centuries and whispered through shadows, allows the mind to drift gently along with history. In the quiet of night, listening to these tales is like walking through a gallery where each exhibit is a memory, a warning, and a marvel all at once. The mysteries of the past become companions rather than distant curiosities, and their weight is softened by the gentle unfolding of narrative. Perhaps this is the final lesson the world has been offering through its treasures and curses, that some things are meant not to be possessed, but to be contemplated. The beauty of a lost city, the shimmer of gold beneath a forest canopy, the silence of a glacier, the flicker of candlelight in an ancient temple. These are the treasures that endure beyond time, not because of their material worth, but because they teach patience, humility, and wonder. They are gifts to those who are willing to listen, to wander, and to dream. As the night deepens, one begins to see a quiet pattern emerge. Treasures and curses are two sides of the same coin. They remind us that every pursuit has consequence, every desire its reflection. They whisper that the human spirit is capable of both brilliance and folly, and that history, in all its mysteries, is both teacher and mirror. In this reflection, the heart finds a certain peace, a knowledge that the world's secrets are not meant to overwhelm, but to guide, to lull gently, and to inspire dreams long after the day has ended. And so, as we leave the deserts, the jungles, the glaciers, and the temples behind, there is a sense of closure, not in finding the treasures, but in having journeyed through their stories. The echoes of the past remain with us, soft and enduring, and the lessons of history, mystery, and wonder settle like a calm tide in the mind. The treasures may sleep, the curses may whisper, but in their presence, the imagination awakens, and the night becomes a companion, guiding the listener gently into rest. And now, as we reach the end of our journey through centuries and continents, through the shadows of lost empires and the silent halls of temples, there is a final sense of stillness that settles over the mind. The treasures we have followed, whether buried beneath the sands, hidden in the jungle, preserved in ice, or enshrined in stone, are not just relics of the past. They are stories, each carrying the weight of human ambition, devotion, curiosity, and sometimes folly. They remind us that the world has always held mysteries beyond comprehension, that some things are meant to be glimpsed but never fully grasped. And in that gentle tension between knowledge and wonder lies their true power. The sleep-friendly nature of these tales lies in the rhythm of history itself. There is a cadence to the rise and fall of civilizations, a pulse that slows and softens when told carefully, almost like a lullaby. From the pharaoh's tombs, where eternal rest awaits even the most ambitious kings, to the jungles of South America, where El Dorado eluded countless seekers, the world hums a quiet song of patience. Even the deserts and the frozen Arctic, places that seemed indifferent and harsh, reveal a tender side when observed in this light. They teach us to listen, to respect, and to be still. The treasures themselves, whether material or spiritual, serve as conduits to reflection. Gold may glitter, gemstones may shine, and relics may radiate sacred meaning, but the real richness comes from contemplating them, from tracing the steps of those who came before, imagining the dangers they faced, and understanding the lessons embedded in their stories. Each legend carries a subtle contrast: light versus dark, wealth versus loss, knowledge versus mystery. It is in this interplay that the mind can wander safely, drifting into a calm awareness of the vastness of the world and the endless thread of history that binds us to it. There is also a profound lesson in patience embedded in these stories. The treasures that survived, the frozen ships, the buried cities, the volcanic ruins, and the guarded temples, endure not because they were sought, but because they were preserved. They waited for the right eyes, the right minds, the right hearts to encounter them. And in waiting, they teach us that the pursuit of knowledge and wonder need not be hurried. Sometimes, it is enough simply to exist in their presence, to imagine the stories they hold, and to let curiosity drift slowly through the corridors of history. As night deepens and the world outside grows still, these tales serve another purpose. They guide the imagination gently toward rest. The mind, having traced lost cities, explored forgotten temples, and stood in the shadows of ice and fire, begins to relax. The mysteries that once stirred tension or curiosity transform into a soft hum, like wind through ancient ruins or the whisper of leaves over forgotten graves. The treasures may remain hidden, but their stories are fully present, offering a quiet companionship that lulls the mind and soul alike. In this final reflection, we recognize that treasures and curses are inseparable. Every treasure carries a caution, every myth a lesson. But the weight of these lessons is softened by the beauty of storytelling, by the gentle unfolding of events across centuries, and by the calm immersion into worlds both real and imagined. The unknown need not frighten. It can soothe, teaching the value of patience, reverence, and wonder. And so, as the last images of temples, tombs, jungles, deserts, and icy seas fade into the mind, there's a gentle closing, a sense that the treasures we have followed are now resting once more, their stories suspended in quiet reflection. The curses are silent, their warnings absorbed into the soft hum of imagination. The past and its mysteries have become companions rather than burdens, and the night itself seems to exhale, carrying with it the weight of countless stories into a calm and restful space. Sleep descends like a velvet curtain, gentle and unbroken. The treasures of history, the whispers of curses, and the long echoes of civilizations now become lullabies, allowing the mind to drift slowly into rest. There is no rush, no need to chase, no urgency, only the soft cadence of centuries and mysteries unfolding in their own time. And as the imagination drifts through these quiet worlds, it finds peace in knowing that some wonders are eternal, waiting patiently for those willing to dream with eyes closed. In this stillness, the final lesson resonates clearly. The greatest treasures are not always those we hold in our hands, but those we carry in our minds, stories, memories, lessons, and dreams. They remain, undisturbed and eternal, a gentle chorus of the past guiding the present, and softly lulling the listener into a night of calm, curiosity, and sleep.